In part two of this head-to-head comparison between the Bricks Builder and Elementor Pro, I am going into the widgets finally and seeing how things really compare in terms of ease of use and functionality. So probably the first 2 hours of Ferdy's tutorial, there is kind of a lot of basic setup, and it turns out that this was a 2024 video that's been re-uploaded and updated slightly, so it's a little bit all over the place, and some older techniques, the kind of things that we were doing just as not just as Elementor Pro was coming out, but certainly before anything V4 related. So what I did was I followed kind of as best I could, knowing full well that we can do things in a better way, in a more modern way. So all I really wanted to show is I followed along with some of the basic elements and how he's showing those. But if you're familiar with any page builder, in fact, it doesn't have to be a paid page builder. Most of what can be done with these basic widgets, so a heading, an icon, a button, and images, particularly anything around the using Flexbox, this stuff is easy enough to do, and it's not worth going into too much detail. So I wanted to just show that I had been through that, and unsurprisingly, I'm happy, of course, that at least Bricks, not that I was even remotely concerned, but the Bricks Builder can do all of that really easily. So what we're looking to do now is build out this hero section in comparison to what he's looking to build out, what he has built out, sorry. And I mean, spoiler alert, we kind of get there, but I think what's really important and what I struggled with quite a bit is that this really isn't the best way to go, but in my opinion, and who am I to judge Ferdy because he's got 1 million subscribers and lots of views, but it's really not a way I think that we're going to look to build out modern websites. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that if we're going to build these kind of pages out, AI can pretty easily do this. So if we just take his tutorial for what it is, that he's showing some of the Elementor and Elementor Pro features, and all we're trying to do is copy that, then this is still not a bad way of going about things. I have, however, and it's taken me a week to get back to this because I've also built out another page for SkyPress Web with Elementor V3. So I'm comfortable with building out a page, and I know that we can do it better and approach it in a more structured and professional way than just sort of it's unkind to say, but it feels a little bit just kind of like hacking away at this, which is what we all had to do in the beginning when we started with these page builders. But that's not why it's worth looking at something like the Bricks Builder. And so all I'm going to do in this video now is sort of show you some of the elements, and more importantly that they're not too different from Elementor Pro, and then just go through a couple of things where I think Bricks Builder may actually stand out a bit more. So let me not babble on too much. The way this has been set up for the hero section is exactly the same. As I mentioned before, we get this section rather than just a container. Inside the section is a container. So in Elementor Pro, you'd use a container and then put containers inside the container. But section is more HTML semantically correct. Pretty cool and pretty important because that's the way the web works. We've got a container with our widgets in, and we've got an image, which is its own container. And sort of following what he's doing, because not everything is set up exactly the same as he's done. Again, because I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that that's the way his way is the way we should be doing things. It's not necessary to get everything pixel perfect, but it's not worth spending too much time on any of these basic items. The basic items being image, heading, and button, because yeah, out the box, we get there, right? Even though it might land here slightly differently, we can get to the exact same place as we do with the Elementor Pro widgets. This not being a tutorial, if you just follow even Ferdy, you'll pretty much be able to hack away at things and get there. So for instance, in the heading here, I changed topography. I got to use the color palette. So I'm not following his styles, but to give you an idea here, I created this variable for myself, and I just changed the color, got it close enough, and then added it to the color palette, just giving it this, well, let me just show you. Let's say, for instance, we want to change this color to, let's go this route. So if we want to add this, we will call it, if we want to add it, we'll call it a new color hero, let's say. And we can save that, and then that will become part of the color palette that we can then use elsewhere. So even if you do approach this building out, even if you approach building out a web page like this, where you may be a much better designer than I am, and you're comfortable with building things out on the web like this, ready for clients, and not going to something like Figma or some other design tool like that, then this is a great way to just set things up as you go. You don't have to necessarily even go to a whole styling system up front. So sorry to contradict myself, but this might be an instance where you just want to build out a landing page and you're going to reuse things sort of as you go along. And as long as your client's happy for you to do that, who am I to judge? Bills must be paid. So let's not spend too much time on the heading, because that's basically similar. And there's nothing special either with the button. If you drag in the button here, yeah, this is a janky thing I mentioned in the previous video, and I keep making the same mistake. Elementor Pro also does this, where it's kind of difficult to place, but if you just drag it across and drop it, life gets simple. As I discussed 2 videos or so ago, you can also create CSS classes for your button. I'm not going to go into it now, but let's say you wanted to reuse this first button, you can save it as a class, and those settings can be applied to other buttons that are placed. More than likely on a landing page, that would be the case. You can also right click and save it as a component. I haven't done too much of that, but that can be done at another point. So when I drag this in, kind of just following the look that he wants to get to, I was able to get this button styling much the same. For background color, we can also use, I use the standard default bricks variables for the color there, just to get something somewhat similar. So not too much more time on the button either. What I did really enjoy spending time on is the list item, because when you drag in that list item, it's part of the general, but much like Elementor, you can search, will be smart and drag it in here, you get something quite a bit different. So rather than the icon and the list item, you get all these other additional features for this widget. And if we go into the list item here, you can see, well, there's a lot of functionality in here, which when you want to build something quite unique for a client, having it all in one widget here and not having to put a whole bunch of widgets together to get the same look and feel, or worse, needing to go figure out how to do it with extra CSS, then that's great. So here's a fairly common widget I feel is used in Elementor Pro. There's a lot of functionality out the box with this. So if I just jump to the list item that I made changes to, you can see I made changes to the list item icon, title, and separator. That separate this gray line across here as the separator, so you can just disable that so it's not there. In order to remove these pricing items, so that might be maybe for a menu, a restaurant or something like that, but in my case, and well, Ferdy didn't need it for his, we can just, inside the list item, remove that meta item. So if I put 10 in here and then add the separator back on, we get that spacing. And it looks like we can do all the changes there. Right, not to go into a tutorial, we can just Control Z and undo that. Control Z, everybody's familiar with, but while I'm thinking about it, you can also go into preview mode exactly the same way as Elementor. Command P, then that just gives you a full view, or you can click on the eye icon here, which is different to view on the front end, where it opens up a separate page. So that's a great way of just being able to quickly view how things are going. And sorry, I'm jumping a little bit away from the list item here, but there is so much that can be done in here. However, I was really able to get pretty much where he got to in exactly sort of the same way. Much of it is just figuring out where these features, where the settings are in each widget in comparison. But yeah, it's not difficult to do. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this video. And what I'll do in the next one is I'll look to build out more of the page, but using this kind of idea in mind of showcasing what's different, what's better, and I'll give Elementor Pro its dues if I come across something and Elementor Pro is a lot better. Let me give you one example so that we are sort of fair. In the heading under typography, there I've placed the font size as pixels. Elementor has a drop down, so you can choose rem or m or I think even percentage, I forget now. Now I have discussed in what we would be doing in a full build website and a modern approach is we would be using these variables, we'd set up our typography up front. But it's not clear to me that if I put rem in here, which is 80 pixels, that I'm getting the same outcome. I think this is now related to the theme settings, which is a little bit confusing. I'm not entirely sure. So having that little drop down, you know exactly what you're using, great, no problem. What do I mean? I don't know now if this has something to do with that, or that me putting in rem in here is the wrong thing to do. So that's probably just something I can find out quite quickly. But it was sort of handy to know that I've got the that drop down. Maybe I'm giving Elementor Pro too much credit, but little, maybe something like that. Once you got your head around it and how things work in the Bricks Builder, then that's a nonsense. But I want to be fair, so if I do come across something in Elementor Pro that's really stand out, I'll certainly mention it. But I am looking for the deal breakers where I know you're using a widget often and now you just can't do it in the Bricks Builder. I am very, very sure that that won't be the case, just looking at what you can do with just some of these widgets so far. Okay, I am hoping that this is worth looking, this video is worth watching, that it's helpful to you as well. But I definitely see that once I'm through this now, that we go and we actually build out either a landing page or maybe a small website where we're using a more professional, modern and structured way to build out the page. So yeah, join me in the next one, or as soon as I get around to being able to do something like that, then I'll post it, and that can be a lot more of a follow along. Thanks for watching this video and have a good rest of your day.